Karlitschek, the founder and CEO of CloudNext. Frank Karlitschek is a long-time open source contributor and former board of the KDE. He founded CloudNext and created a fully open source, decentralized alternative to big centralized cloud companies. And for today, please welcome him for the session, How to Build a Sustainable Open Source Company. Welcome.
Thanks a lot. It's really great to be here. I have to say this is one of my favorite conferences here. I really try to come here every year and really like it. And thanks again for the for the invitation. So my name is Frank Karlitschek, as already announced. I'm doing open source for a long time in different organizations. For example, I was a board member of KDE for a very long time. But now I'm probably likely to be that I was invited here because I'm the founder and CEO of Nextcloud. I want to talk a little bit about how to build a sustainable open source company. First, to give you a little bit of an overview of what Nextcloud actually is, what we're actually doing, and then a little bit about how the company is working. And then I want to talk about 4 things that might be interesting for you regarding an open source company. So this is was the motivation for me to start this project in the first place many years ago. It's like 15 years now, because I thought I don't want to live in a world where like 5 big companies control all our data and all our communication all over the internet. I think this is quite a dystopia. At a time, it was a bit of an abstract threat, but nowadays, of course, if you're following the news, you can see that this is actually real now and something that we really need to work on, especially we as an open source community. So, as I said before, my open source career, I started with KDE. KDE, you all know it's a Linux desktop. It's a fascinating project because there's no company behind it. It's completely self-organized. It's completely run by volunteers only, so it is quite interesting. The challenge here is that, of course, people drop out regularly. For example, they're active contributor while being in university, and then later, when they start a full-time job somewhere else, they don't have time anymore. So there's a lot of there was a lot of churn there in the volunteer community, and I was always thinking, what can we do to make it possible to actually make it possible to pay open source developers full-time? Right, that we open source developers don't have to do this as a hobby only, but really as a job where we can all do this as a normal job every day. That was always the dream. And of course, this is something that we want to build as Nextcloud, because Nextcloud is an open source community, but it's also a company. And I want to talk about the company part today. A little bit about the product. I think most of you might know it. Who knows Nextcloud? Yeah. Okay, so a little bit over half, I think. That's not too bad. Still a little bit of a quick overview of what we do. Nextcloud is a collaboration suite. So it's basically everything that you need to communicate and collaborate over the internet. It has file sync and share. You can upload and download your files. You can do chat, video conferencing. You have calendar, contacts, email, office, notes, photos, everything you need. So this is why we have very similar structure than Microsoft or Google Workspace with Nextcloud Files for the file sync and share part, Teams, Talk for the Teams alternative for chat video conferencing, then Groupware, of course, with mail, calendar, contacts as Outlook alternative, and then Office. That's basically what we do. There's, of course, one huge difference is that everything we do is open source, and you can download it and run it wherever you want. So we as Nextcloud, we don't even do hosting. That's not what we want to do. We provide the software. You can go to our website, download it, and install it and run it wherever you want. So it's about decentralization of the internet. This is what we try to achieve. A little bit quickly through the products. This is the Nextcloud Files part. You can upload, download the files. You can tag them. You can search them, and everything you expect from a project like that. Then there is Nextcloud Talk, which is for chat and video conferencing, like Microsoft Teams, and a very nice tool with all the features you expect. Of course, video conferencing, we have native iOS and Android apps, and also a native desktop app for Mac, Windows, and Linux. So it's quite nice to do the video conferencing and the chatting every day. There's, of course, the calendar for shared calendar and to work together with other people. The mail client, there's Nextcloud Mail. Then there is Nextcloud Office. This is something we do together with our friends from Collabra. where you can do collaborative editing directly in the browser of Office documents. Then there are a little bit more advanced features like our new whiteboard. This is where you can use to collaboratively work together on this infinite canvas here. And there are our AI features. So of course we have the Nextcloud Assistant, so completely local on your device. You can chat with the assistant and ask him to do things and ask for information, going through my mails and my documents and so on. So it's quite powerful thing. So this is the software from a community side. We're also growing nicely. We have over 500,000 servers active on the internet at the moment. Of course, we don't really know what they're doing on the server. Obviously, that's the privacy part. But because the Nextcloud servers, they ping our update server and ask for updates, we can count them, and we know they have over 500,000 on the internet. The number of users we don't really know. We can only estimate it, but we know some very big instances of 50 million users is realistic. And of course, we have lots of contributors on GitHub to our code, which is really amazing. From a company side, again, want to talk a bit about a company here today. We are privately owned, so it's completely independent, so we don't have any investors, which is a good thing. We are 140 people at the moment, distributed in 23 countries, so very, very international. No one from Thailand yet, but maybe we can change this. Yeah, and we are fully committed to open source, and we will never do anything else. This is the number of employees. We are growing quite nicely. This is because our positioning as the digital sovereign alternative to big tech solutions works quite well at the moment. And this is even before our best marketing person, Donald Trump, went into office. So yeah, I think the theoretical fear that we all were talking for 20 plus years, now we can really see why open source free software, digital sovereign solutions are super important for the future. Okay, so this was just the basics. Let's talk a little bit about how to build a sustainable open source company. Of course, there are 1,000 things need to be considered, and I don't even know where to start, and I don't want to give a lecture here, but I think 4 things I want to point out which are maybe a little bit special, that maybe they're a little bit unusual compared to other startups. The first is that I really think you need to have some ethics, some fundamental ethical principles in your organization. Why is this important? Because I think it gives you meaning. It is not just a job. It's not just another thing you do for your living. Sure, it's good to have a salary, but I think what you do should have a higher meaning, and this is why ethical guidelines are very important. So from Nextcloud, from the very beginning, from the very first meeting, when we founded Nextcloud as a group, we gave ourselves some principles, and let's quickly go through that. The first is sustainability. So we want to be a company that is not optimized for the next quarter, but actually really stays around for many, many years. So it's optimized for sustainability and not quick profit. Privacy and security is super important for us. So everything we do is, of course, to protect the privacy of the users. And of course, we as a company always support it as best as possible. User-centered design. Maybe you know that some open source projects sometimes don't have the best usability. That's actually true, because in a lot of projects, design and user experience is not really that respected. I think with Nextcloud, we really try to make this a very important goal, to make Nextcloud as easy as possible to use. Trust is a very important thing. So trust means that in the Nextcloud company internally, we trust each other. We do fully remote work, as I showed you. So of course, you cannot really check when someone starts to work or ends to work what they're actually doing, but we work together on a trust level and a result-driven level, and this is very important in my experience. Open source, as I said, everything we do is open source, and it will also never change. It's one of our fundamental principles. Related are open standards. Open standards is also something that we always respect. If there's a standard that we can use, we always use it, as we do with WebDAV or CalDAV or CarDAV or ActivityPub or others. And if there's no standard, we need to create one, but then we also do this in the open. Decentralization is very important, so really that you build a decentralized web. This is also the reason why, as Nextcloud, we don't have a central server, but we really want to encourage everybody to host it themselves. Community is very important, as I said already. We work in a community-oriented way in public on the internet, but more about this in a second. inclusion and diversity is something, and it's not just a theoretical goal. This really gives, in my experience, a really best company culture and a great way to work together and have better results. It works like for everybody on the planet, and that's one of our principles. And accessibility, last but not least, of course, Nextcloud software should be as easy as possible to be used by everyone. So these are the principles. I think it's very important to have them, again, because you really want to be more than just another company to make money for the shareholders. Second point, obviously very important, is the business model. It's of course one of the very, very important things to choose from the very beginning, how you do that. I did some research a few years ago. I think there's even an official Wikipedia page about lists all the different business models, from selling stickers to, I don't know, very creative things. I think there's only one business model which is working, and this is also what we are doing at Nextcloud, and that's what other open source companies like Red Hat or SUSE or MariaDB or many others are using. And this is basically the idea that the code should be 100% open source, 100% transparent and developed in the open. But there will still be an additional service on top, which is usually around support. So for example, from Red Hat, you can buy the Red Hat subscription, and it comes with support, special packaging, long-term support, and so on. And it's exactly the same thing we do as Nextcloud. So we don't do open core, so the software is open, it's available, but we build basically a package that is optimized for the typical home user, for the typical community user. This is our all-in-one Docker container. And then there are some other packages, some other things to use it, which are important if you run it on a Kubernetes cluster with 100,000 millions of users. Then this is something that our enterprise customers get. So this is a bit of the summary. As an enterprise customer, you get those five things: expertise, influence, compliance, security, and stability. Let's quickly go through it, but very quickly. So the first thing is, of course, the expertise. This means that as an enterprise customer, you have access to our engineers. And it's not going to some call center, but you can really directly access our engineers, and this is what our customers are paying for. If they run Nextcloud in a mission-critical way, you really don't want to have any downtime at all. And it's just very important to have someone on the line if, I don't know, whatever happens. You really have the absolute expert in the world, because that's the person who wrote the code on the phone to help you. The second thing is influence. So of course, as a customer, you have influence. For example, we have a product advisory board. It's a group of customers who come together regularly, and we discuss our roadmap and ideas for the future. And it's very important to have this feedback channel with customers. Then compliance is a thing that we give to our customers. For example, there are certain certifications, and they are bound to certain releases, and this is something that our paying enterprise customers get, and community not. And security is also things that we get priority access to, patches or information if there's a security problem found. So basically providing the services to keep the software secure. Stability is the last but not least the points you get as a paying customer, which is, again, priority access to some critical patches, long-term support, and other things. So basically, the summary is it's really important to pick the best possible business model for you. But I want to encourage to look at what others are doing and not invent something for yourself, because there are actually proven open source business models and others that work not so much. The third point I want to talk about is like architecture, and this is maybe a bit misleading. I think what I really mean here is you need to come up with something special about your product. And open source has the opportunity to provide like some disruptive technologies there, that you can do something that your competitor cannot do. Because if you just develop everything the same as your big tech competitors are doing, just as a small company, then why would you win? Of course, you need something special, something unique. And in the open source space, we picked, of course, the decentralization and the self-hosted part, which is something that you cannot do with the big tech solutions. And here I want to talk a bit about one way we explain this, and this is the federation principle. So this is, of course, how a typical big tech SaaS solution works. You have a centralized server. Every customer connects to the server. Very easy. But you can see the problem. The organization in the middle is in full control of everything. With Nextcloud, you can have something like that. You can have lots and lots of like small instances, decentralized, self-hosted, but you can see the problem. They have isolated islands that cannot necessarily talk with each other. And this is something we solved with Federation. With Federation, you can actually share like resources between other people on other servers, and you don't even notice that a person is on a different server. So that's a very important principle for us. For example, it works with the federated sharing. This is a feature we have for many, many years. In the normal share dialog, you can type in the cloud ID of a different user on a different server. It's with the username at server instance, is similar to an email address. And then my server contacts the other server and say, hey, here's a share request, want to accept it, blah, blah, blah. And then you have a shared folder between the two different servers. Second example is social. We have Nextcloud Social at Nextcloud. It's a social network compatible to Mastodon, also using ActivityPub. Of course, this is also fully federated. And then in the last release, we added also federation support for Nextcloud Talk. So you can now invite other people to a chat conversation that are actually on different servers. So you can invite people from your partner company and they have a different Nextcloud to your Nextcloud and you're all in the same server room. It just looks native. You get a normal notifications on your phone. Everything works like native, but the person is actually on a different instance physically. And with the last release, we expanded it to video calls. So you can now call people on different Nextcloud servers. You can again, with the share dialog, you can use username at server instance, and you can invite someone else into a video call, or actually if you call the person, of course with a security check first, and then the phone rings of the person and you can have a video call. So that's quite a powerful thing, because we also have a shared address book. We have a feature, it's like a global phone book, basically. And as a Nextcloud user, you can choose if you want to be listed in the phone book or not. This is similar to like a GPG key server, you can imagine. And by default, obviously not. But in the settings, you can say, yes, I want to be found in the phone book. And these are the information, like name and email address, for example, that should be public. And then you list in the phone book. And then with other people, you search you in the share dialog, want to call you, you show up there in the share dialog. So why I'm saying that? This is quite a special capability that big tech solutions can never do, because they are centralized, they are SaaS. So they can never do a decentralized approach like that. And I think as a tip for your upcoming business, you need to find something that's special about you, something special about open source that you can leverage. If you just copy everything the others do, then you will not be successful. And then the fourth thing to talk about is, of course, community. So again, if you're a small company, you don't have any people, you don't have any money, you don't have any resources, you have nothing, how can you get anything done as alternative to the big companies? Well, the solution is, of course, that you're not alone, that you're together with the community and you can do things together. And you have a lot of people that are hopefully passionate about what you do, and you can do this as a working together project, basically. So we see Nextcloud standing on two shoulders. One is the community and one is the company. And we both contribute to the same code to make it a product successful. So everything we do is on GitHub, not only the code, but also the pull requests and the discussions around it, test results, bug reports, feature requests, roadmap planning, everything. So everything can be part of it. Sometimes it's a bit surprising for new developers who join us from proprietary companies that are surprised that who is this person reviewing my code? I don't know this person. How can I talk to them? I don't know either. It's just someone on the internet. Right? And this can sometimes be surprising for people who come from a closed source world, but this works very, very well for us on GitHub. Then, of course, if you don't really want to contribute to the core itself, you can also build Nextcloud apps that are extensions around it. And this is something that you can also get involved, and you can build all kinds of extensions on top of Nextcloud. Sometimes we go through the download statistics, and it's sometimes surprising what is popular. For example, there is this cookbook app, right, to manage your recipes. And this is actually one of the most popular apps that we have. I was really surprised about that. There are really over 400 very creative things there done by the community, and you can install it on your Nextcloud server with one click. And yeah, that's very cool. And then, of course, we also bring people together for the community building. So this is from the Nextcloud conference from last year. that we had in Berlin. This year we plan to have it even bigger because we reached the capacity of the room there. But this is why we bring people together for a week to hack together, to make Nextcloud better, to push it forward. So summary from my side is, so I couldn't really give you the full manual how to build a sustainable open source business model and company, because at the end of the day you need to figure it out yourself. But I wanted to give you some advice that you can really leverage the community, you can really have a differentiator with the power of open source, and you need to have some ethical principles because you need to have a real reason why you exist, also as a product, and some other things. But I really want to advise you that going with an open source business model has many, many advantages. You're immediately part of a community, you immediately have like fans and like grassroots people who support you. So I think the notion that the open source business model is a problem because you give away your product, I think it's actually the opposite. If you do this in a good way, then open source business model is like a great way to disrupt the big tech companies. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Frank, for the introduction to about the open source company. Thanks a lot.
Do we have time for a Q&A? Not really.
Yeah. Any question here? We will have like 3 minutes for the question. Please raise your hand. Okay, one question, two questions. Would you mind coming here for the mic? Okay, we can do the queue.
Frank, great talk. On external, say, plugins and communities, what are the key principles to building a external plugin community?
Key principles you need to know to build a plugin, basically, or how to...
Yeah, the basic principles of what makes a plugin community actually work and it's sustainable.
Yeah. So first of all, it needs to be super easy to do it. You really want to have lots of example codes, you want to have tutorials, really, really great documentation that you can, that's just easy and fun. Then an easy way to publish it, right? You don't want to have something like Apple where you need to have a complicated review process and walled gardens, right? It needs to be easy to publish. And I think just also welcoming an open community. There are some communities also in the open source world where you post a question and no one answers you for half a year and nothing happens, and this can be really a problem. You really need to be like super open and friendly and welcoming for new people.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. For another question. Okay.
Thank you. It was a great talk. So my name is Nitish Tiwari. I'm from Gartner. I wanted to ask you that, we see a lot of talks about business models in open source. Every company is trying to do something. We have seen open core. We have seen shifts to source available licenses. We have seen commercial support as well. Do you think that Red Hat and companies like you have actually created by wrapping the open source software under an enterprise per user license, which turns out to be the best business model ever? Do you think this is the best business model ever, or do you think it's still the open source communities and companies are still trying to build a good business model out there?
Yeah, that's a very big question. I can talk about it for an hour or longer. Yeah, this is a big question of the last few years, right? That, I don't know, classically we have open source, which is clearly defined by the open source initiative, what it is. There are certified licenses and it's pretty clear what it means. But nowadays we have these creative excuses to get around it with like the license changes and some weird open core structures, and I'm not a big fan of that. I don't like it because it's also false marketing. I mean, it's fine to have a proprietary solution, but then call it open source because it's not. So we need to be precise with how you call it. I don't like it. And at the end of the day, I also don't believe that they're successful because you need to create some kind of win-win-win, like you as a company and the community and your customers. At the end, everybody needs to be happy. If someone is not happy, then the whole thing is not working.
Thank you. Thank you.